I'll blame him. He did it.
He's said in the chat that he needs
Okay, so anybody not there yet? Anybody want to go that isn't there yet? Okay, so next. Raffle. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to be in this lab trying to be building a UI that looks kind of like this. And actually, I don't get this far because I don't think we have enough time. But the idea is we're going to build an app that has the capability to review a meal that you just ate. Following the instructions, I'm going to be jumping around, so forgive me. The very first thing we need to do is open Xcode. And I've already got it open. So I'm going to close it out. Reopen it. I had it open there where I was going through the lesson and kind of trying to time myself to see how far I could get during the day. So if you don't know, Xcode is usually within your apps applications folder. And we are going to create a new Xcode project. We're going to go within iOS application and create a single view application. And I'm going to call this one just like they do in the tutorial, food tracker, I think it's called, right? Food tracker. And I'm going to leave all the rest of this the way it is. They say don't check, use core data, check include unit tests, and don't check include UI tests. Next, I'm going to create a new folder and call it food tracker. Because I've already got food tracker without the space in it. Put it under food tracker too. Awesome. And why not? I'll just leave it there. Okay, so that created my bare app, and I think from there it recommends that you go ahead and run the app in a simulator to make sure that you can. So if you look at Xcode, you'll notice that there's a run button up here at the top, and that will run it on the emulator targeting whichever platform is selected here in this option box. In the tutorial, it tells you to pick an iPhone 6, and I would recommend that you do that just because if you don't, you'll end up with something with your emulator will look slightly different than mine up here. You know, not imperative, but you know, just slightly different. So we're going to hit run, and again, this is a base app. We haven't done anything. So what do you think we're going to see? But nothing. I'm going to scale it down just a little bit so we can see the entire screen. Unfortunately, I didn't bring my Mac's HDMI adapter, so we're looking at this on VGA tonight. I'm looking at this at half resolution right now. It's fine, Chris. It's too late for me to change. I mean, it would take too much time to, you know. So what we just did was we created a Hello World app basically that doesn't do anything and it has a blank user interface. The next step in the tutorial it says look at the app-delegate.swift source file. So make sure the project navigator is open in the navigator area. The project navigator displays all the files in your project. and that's this thing right here. And it tells you to open appdelegate.swift. Bunch of stuff. Wow. Okay, and it basically goes over the file contents and explains them in the tutorial. I don't really have time to do all that. I mean, I'm not going to skip over everything. I'm just not going to go over everything that's not imperative, not important for the demonstration. The appdelegate.swift source file has two primary functions. It creates the entry point, and it defines the appdelegate class. The appdelegate class contains a single property window with the type of UI window. The appdelegate class also contains several template implementations of important methods, and they're used during app state transition and other important events. Also in the app is a function called viewcontroller.swift. And viewcontroller, it's got the two functions predefined. And it tells us that we don't need did receive memory warning method. So go ahead and delete the second method that was automatically stubbed out in your class. Okay, next, I'm going to save. It tells us to open the main.storyboard, which is here, the third file down in my user interface. By the way, I said this in the email. I'm using Xcode 7.3 version 7D175. So unless you're using the very latest version of Xcode, you might have a slightly different user interface here than I do, a slightly different IDE than I do. But you know, it's most of this should be portable to recent Xcode versions. Anyway, okay, back to Xcode. We're supposed to open the main.storyboard, and this here in the main.storyboard will show us this is how we do WYSIWYG user interface design. What you see is what you get. So we're going to be able to drag and drop our user interface elements onto this storyboard, and theoretically, when you run your app, it'll run a device just like you put it onto the storyboard. So first thing it says, we're going to build the basic UI. And to start off, it says open the object library. On my user interface in my Xcode, the object library is in the lower right-hand corner of the IDE. Okay, so the tutorial says in the object library, type the text field. And that will help us to find a text field view. And this is the control that you would put into your user interface to display text that is editable by the user. So drag the text field from the object library onto your scene. Okay, it's going to say to drag the text field so that it's positioned in the top half of the scene and aligned with the left margin of the scene. When you drag the text field and you put it up here, you'll notice, oh, well, is it because I'm zoomed in? Oh, I put it, oops.
Just gotta scroll up a little bit. You can't see the view.
Yeah. If you close your scene pane, then it's at the bottom left.
Oh. You can't see the edge of it.
That?
Go for the
No,
Okay. Tell me one more time.
you take your arrow and point it down just above the word "your" on your Google Hangouts.
Oh, I almost
It's a little to the left,
left.
right there.
Nope, yeah, that thing.
This?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And that gives you more room.
Oh, okay.
And
So,
now you can,
oh, I
you'll
see.
be able to see those blue lines.
I got it. So now when I, okay, so there's the margin area. And thank you. And when I did this before, I was doing it on a higher resolution display, so this is not my experience from before. It asks you to align it with the left-hand margin and in the upper half of the UI. Okay, so next, click the text field to show the size handles, which is already done, and then drag the right-hand size handle until you see the right-hand margin of the UI. And this means that the text field will take up all available space on the device. And actually, it's actually a fixed size right now. We'll see that in a minute. We're going to fix this when we get into a little bit more advanced UI programming, a little bit more. Okay, so we resized it to takes up the entire view, the entire parent view. Now, the tutorial says to go into the attributes inspector, which is this guy right here. Click on this, and in the attributes inspector, find the field labeled placeholder and type enter meal name. What this is going to do is going to set a placeholder text. Oops. Oh, crap. It's going to set the placeholder text to the text enter meal name. So until you actually enter anything into the text field, it's going to display a grayed out text value of enter meal name. So now we hit enter, and that's what it looks like. Okay, now when you're editing the text field's attributes, you can also edit the attributes of the system keyboard is displayed whenever a user selects the text field to make sure that to configure the text field's keyboard, make sure the text field is still selected. In the attributes inspector, find the field label return key and select done. Okay. And in the attributes inspector, select the auto enable return key checkbox. Done. Now we're going to add a label to the scene. So in the object library, type label. Oops. I hit enter by accident. And then drag it up to where it's just above the text field and aligned with the left-hand margin. Next, we're going to double-click the label and enter its name as meal name. So that's the text that's always going to be displayed in the label. And the difference between a label and a text field is not obvious, is that a text field is editable by the user at runtime, whereas the label just appears to be text that is static. So now the scene should look like this. Yay, it does. Okay, now we're going to add a button. So in the object library, type button. I'm going to drag that down here. And we're going to set its text to set default label text. And when I did that, it changed its location, so I'm just going to drag it back into place. At this point, your scene should look something like this. So now it says it's going to understand how the elements you've added are actually arranged on the scene. Now we're going to look at the outline view to see what the UI elements have been added to your scene. So in the storyboard, we're going to find the outline view toggle, which is what we did before. And if the outline view is collapsed, click the toggle to expand the outline view. You can use the outline view toggle to collapse and expand the outline view as needed, and like we saw earlier, get more space for editing and maybe make it more obvious what's going on. Okay, so now to preview your interface, we're going to click on the Assistant button in the Xcode toolbar, which is the two circles what's the word? Connecting at the top of the user interface, top right of the user interface. And it says, like we did earlier, if you need more space to edit your code, collapse this guy and collapse this guy. So now we're looking at a much more compact user interface in the IDE. In the editor selector bar, which appears at the top assistant menu, at the top of the assistant editor, switch the assistant editor from automatic to preview main storyboard. So here it says automatic. We're going to select preview main storyboard. Okay, so now we've got a preview of what our user interfaces would look like. What happened? Okay, next. As you see in the user assistant editor, the text field doesn't look quite right. Oops. It goes off the screen, and why is that? It's because we actually defined the text field to be a fixed width without meaning to. We dragged it and made it the entire width of the device, but the storyboard we're looking at is actually bigger than the resolution of our display. So what we're going to do is make our user interface adaptive and put it into a stack so that so that the user interface will automatically adopt to the resolution of the display that it's displayed on. Okay, so Auto Layout is a powerful layout engine that helps you to design adaptive layouts with ease. You describe your intent for positioning elements in a scene, and then let the engine determine how best to implement that intent. In combination with Auto Layout, one of the most useful tools for working with layouts like the one we've just done is the stack view. The UI stack view is actually the name of the class that manages that. The stack view provides a streamlined interface for laying out a collection of views. There are views like this in pretty much every language. Android's got one. Typical Java, you can do the same thing. I can't remember what it's called in .NET, but there's always some kind of component where you put one component after another, a horizontal layout or a vertical layout, and that's what the stack view does. So to add auto layout constraints to the meal scene, we're going to turn to the standard editor by clicking the standard button. In Xcode, that's this guy. And we're going to expand the project navigator and utility area by clicking the navigator and UI buttons in the Xcode toolbar again. So here we're going to expand this again, expand this. And while pushing the Shift key on the keyboard, we're going to select all three of the user interface components that we've already added. So Shift, I'm holding Shift down, click on this, this, and this. And now we have a group of elements selected. And it's going to tell us to click on the stack button, which is this guy right here. So if I click on stack with these three selected, it'll automatically add all of those guys into one stack user interface. So basically it's taken a parent view container and encapsulated all those other three things into it. And you can see that in this view controller scene that the parent view is now contains a stack view, and a stack view contains the meal name label, the inner meal name text field, and the button.
I'm on an older version. I've got a line in resolve auto layout inside.
Okay, yeah. It also it says there's another way to get to the stack view. Alternatively, choose editor embed in stack view. You have that?
Nope. That's right. Keep going.
Sorry. You look trouble. Okay. Okay. Moving right along. Now, as I said, we've embedded these three guys into one parent container right now. Xcode wraps UI elements in a standard stack view, stacking them together, and it analyzes your existing layout to figure out automatically whether it's going to be a vertical layout or a horizontal layout. So now we're going to open the outline view just like I did, and I showed you that the three elements are contained there. So now in the we're going to select the stack view, and in the attributes container, for spacing, we're going to hit 12. And just to show you what this does, oops, I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see the three elements moved apart. If you make this, let's say, 120, then the three user interface components are going to be farther apart. So there's 120 pixels of space now between each elements. In the case of this tutorial, they're saying the margin between the elements should be 12, so we'll just use that for now. Okay, on the bottom right of the canvas, we're going to open the pen menu. Oh yeah, and I'll read through this on the tutorial first before I do it, because it's actually more instructions than I can do in one step. It says, okay, we're gonna make sure that in order to place this stack container such that it occupies the entire user interface, we're going to pin it to this side and to this side and to the top. That way, it's automatically laid out such that it's at the top of the screen and it fills the entire width of the screen. Now to do that, you go to the pin container, or to the pin. Sorry. This is the pin. What do they call it? Pin menu. On my user interface, I don't know what it looks like for anybody else, but it's this box surrounded by two lines. It looks kind of like a TIE fighter from Star Wars. TIE fighter.
So you have stack view highlighted.
Yes, stack view is highlighted, and only do this once, because if you do it more than once, you can add constraints more than once. So if you do add constraints more than once, you can Command Z to undo, which is what I had to do a couple of times when I was doing this the first time. So we're going to go click the pin menu, and we're going to click this line here to pin it to the left side, this line here pin it to the right side, and we're going to have 0 as the margin between the left margin, and between the left and right margin and the component itself. Oop, crap. See, now I've got to hit Control Z because I hit Enter. Command Z. So left, right, 0, 60. So I got these three lines highlighted, and I think I hit items of new constraints here and add 3 constraints. And what this will do is it'll, as I said, pin this stack view to the left, right, and top with a margin of 60 at the top. And I'm sure there's a way to do this programmatically, and there are probably people in here that can tell you how, but this is how you do it in the designer. So I'm going to add 3 constraints, and now our UI looks like we wanted it to. So now, in your storyboard, oh wait, so it says now it should look like this. Did it look like that? Yep, looks kind of like that. And now in the storyboard, select the text field in the meal scene. On the bottom right of the canvas, open the pen menu. Above spacing to nearest neighbor, click the 2 horizontal constraints to select them so that it's pinned to the left and right sides. And 0, and then put 0 in each of the left and right boxes. And then click items of new constraints. So we're going to hit the pin menu again. Left and right with 0 in both margins. And date frames, items of new constraints, and add constraints. So now the stack view is pinned to the sides of its parent view, and the text field is pinned to the sides of the stack view. And this should look kind of familiar to user interface programmers for other platforms, because it's, you do something similar to this in Android or whatever. But usually people with a different kind of layout. So now with the text field selected, we're into the size inspector in the utility area. In the size inspector is this guy right here. So if you hover over each one of these guys in the menu, it'll tell you what it is. For instance, this is a file inspector, quick help, identity, attributes, size. Click on size. Okay. Oh. In the intrinsic size field, we're going to want to select placeholder. And then what we're going to do is define a. Wait a minute. Doing the right thing here? Yeah. Okay, text fields are sized based on their contents, which define their intrinsic content size. Intrinsic content size refers to the minimum size needed to display at all times. You can assign UI elements in a placeholder intrinsic content size. If you need to design a UI for different size, then you can anticipate at design time. Right now, the text field's only content is its placeholder string, but the actual text a user enters could be longer than that. So now, the meal scene UI should look like that, and it kind of does. So now it says it recommends that we run the app in a simulator. And hit run again. I'm going to stop the previous instance. And the emulator pop up. So now we got this. And if we click inside the text box and start typing, if I can type. That's it. Okay, so again, this doesn't do anything yet because we haven't made it do anything, but we've got at least a user interface that we can do something with. Okay, now, next, we are going to I think that's it for this stage. Yeah. That's it for the stage. So now we're going to go on to connecting the UI to code. And in these steps, we're going to be connecting the basic UI to the code to determine some actions that a user can perform in the UI. When we're finished, the app will look something like this. Again, I'm going to run through this. In the storyboard, click main.storyboard. Main.storyboard. Oops. Click on the Assistant button in the Xcode toolbar near the top right corner of Xcode to open the Assistant editor. Okay. Now if you want more space, it recommends hiding these guys again. In the editor selector bar, which appears at the top of the Assistant editor, change the Assistant editor from preview to automatic viewcontroller.swift. So we're going to scroll to automatic viewcontroller.swift. And a viewcontroller.swift displays in the editor on the right. So in the first line, we should see viewcontroller, UI, viewcontroller. There it is. We're going to add the comment mark properties. In Swift, a comment with comment beginning with the name with the all caps text mark indicates it's special pre-parser compiler language so that the IDE knows that this is a place in the code where the properties will appear, and it'll show us how to find those later. In the storyboard, select the text field. There it is. And control drag from the text field on your canvas to the code display in the editor on the right, stopping just below the comment we just added. So control drag like that. and put it right there. Oops. And then what this is going to do is it is basically going to create a link between the user interface and the code, and it's asking what the property, what the name of the property should be. We're going to call it name text field, and leave the rest of the defaults the same. It's declared as a UI text field optional, and it's a weak variable, and it's declared with the attribute name IB outlet, which tells the compiler that this is actually an element that is referring to something in the user interface. So now it'll take about a minute to understand what's happening. I'll skip over this for now. So now to connect the label to the view controller, we're going to select label and control drag the same way we did the text field. Control drag. And we're going to call this one meal name label. And then now we have the two properties there together that are both outlets for the user interface. And next we're going to define an action to perform. Okay, so before the last curly brace in the code, I'm going to go here and put this comment mark actions. Again, this is going to tell the IDE that there's a section of actions here. And in the storyboard, select the set default label text button. And your control drag, same way we did with the others, but here we're going to make an action. Instead of being an outlet, it's an action, and the name is set default label text. And for type, automatically it's any object, but we want it to be a UI button. And we'll show you what this does in a second. And we're leaving the rest of them like they are. So we're going to connect. And that created a function so that when you click this button in the user interface, it's actually going to now invoke this button, this method, set default label text that we just defined. And it's going to pass as a parameter the button that was clicked. Okay, now in viewcontroller.swift, find the action that we just added and set the content of it to look like this. So now, when we click on the button, it's going to set the meal name label text to default text. So now, if we run this, theoretically, I should be able to click that button, and I'll cross my fingers that it didn't do something stupid, and it'll work. Hey, look at that. So when I click this button, it changes the text to default text. Yay. All right. Moving right along. Okay, next, we want to process user input. So we're going to add a couple of interfaces or protocols to the class. So in view controller, find the class line, which looks like this, and add a comma and the text UI text field delegate to adopt the UI text field delegate protocol. And a protocol is similar to what you might see in Java as an interface or an abstract class in C++. So UI view controller.swift. Put that right here. Replace this line with new text. So we've adopted this protocol. So we're going to find the viewDidLoad method, which is there. And below super.view to load, add a blank line in the following. Okay, that's going to set the name text field delegates value to the value of the view controller's object. So now view controller is now a delegate for name text field. The UI text field delegate contains two optional methods that we haven't implemented yet. To implement the UI text field protocol method, text field should return. We're going to first, above the marked actions comment, we're going to create another section. And paste in this method definition here. Text field should return. And I know I'm skipping a lot, but I'm basically following the instructions. Okay, next, the second method is the text field did end editing. We're going to add the declaration for that. We should look like this. And what this method does, text field should return. It's basically when the user has hit the return button, then it's going to return true. And when the text field, when you're done editing, you're going to set the meal name label, this label, to whatever text you enter in here. So now if we run this again, we've added some responsiveness to the user input. And so now when I type in my text field some text, hit enter, it changes the text of the label to whatever I typed in. Okay, I'm going to try and finish this next step, and then let people that want to go. Okay, the next lesson we're going to work on the UI. We're going to add a photo to the bottom of our user interface. So to add an image view to the scene, on the storyboard, go to main and storyboard. Open up this part of the IDE, main.storyboard. Okay, and in the object library, in the utility area, and type image view. Okay, now we got an image view there. And we're going to drag that into the stack right below the button. Okay, hide this. Now we're going to go into the size inspector. In the intrinsic size of the image, we're going to set it to placeholder again. So we're going to go image view, size inspector, intrinsic size is going to be placeholder with the width and height, I think it was 320. 320. Hit enter. Now in our user interface, we've got an image that is 320 by 320, and it will always be that way. So an empty image doesn't have intrinsic content size, so we're going to give the image view size so that we can specify the appropriate constraints in the interface. Okay, so now on the bottom right of the canvas, open the pen menu, select the checkbox next to aspect ratio so that whatever image goes into the image view, it retains this aspect ratio, it's not stretched. and add one constraint. Okay, now with the image view selected, we're going to open the attributes inspector and find the field labeled interaction and select user interaction enabled, and that will make the image view interactive, such that we can actually click on it and get an event. So now we're going to need to display a default photo. One thing I should have said at the beginning of the code lab is that if you want to use the images that are in this code lab, it might be a good idea just to go to the bottom step. Okay, we're on stage 3 right now, work with view controllers. So if you go to the bottom of this page, you can download the project for the file, the project for this tutorial as it is at the end of work with view controllers. And in this project, they have the images that they work with and add to your user interface. So yeah, it's 7:30. So I'm going to try and get this image in there, and then I'm going to let people go if you want. But yeah, give me 10 minutes, and I'll try and have this at a reasonable dropping off point. And tell me at 7:45 where we are. Yeah, like I said, I knew we weren't going to get too far with this, but you know, especially user interface design, it always takes longer than you think it will. For those of you who don't do user interface design, I don't care how long you think it's going to take. It's going to take 10 times that long. Every time. You got a margin, you got a space, you got a little pixel here that you didn't like, it's red instead of blue, whatever. It always takes longer than you think. So, where was I? Okay, so now I needed to download the project so that I can get this image. So to add an image to the project, in the project navigator, select assets.xcassets. And we're going to add a new folder. Or no, wait, is this? Yeah, in this case, we just add a new image set. So we're going to add the new image set by clicking this plus button down here. And we're going to call this image default photo. And we're going to go into our operating system finder. And find the image which is this default photo selected. I probably could have done the same thing by just right-clicking on this image and saving it to my operating system, but you know, I'm trying to follow instructions a little bit. So I'm going to drag this photo from the operating system finder into Xcode, and it says to do it into the 2x resolution. So now, according to the instructions, when you drag it into the 2x slot, 2x is the display resolution for the iPhone 6 simulator that you're using in these lessons, so the image will look best in this resolution. With the default placeholder image added to your project, set the image to view to display it. To display a default image in the image view, open a storyboard. In the storyboard, select the image view. And then in the image menu of the attributes assistant, attributes inspector, select default photo. and that will, by default, put that photo that we just added to our project and display that within the user interface. Okay, now if we run the app, we should see that photo that we just added. And there it is. Okay, it's at 7:45, so I'm going to go a little farther. Okay, now we're going to connect the image view to code. So to do so, we'll click on the Assistant button in the Xcode toolbar. And hide these non-essential parts. And we're going to control drag from the image to the canvas, stopping just below the existing outlets in viewcontroller.swift. So we're going to control drag, and in the dialog that appears in the name, we're going to call this variable photo image, or this outlet photo image view, and leave the rest of the options as they are. Oops. Enter. And then we'll have a variable that refers to this user interface component. Okay, now we click connect, and we're going to connect a gesture recognizer, and this is what's going to allow us to have a click handler for the image. So in the object library, type tap gesture. And this one's a little more unintuitive than the others. This isn't exactly a user interface component. This is a handler for a user action. So we're going to drag the handler on top of the image. And actually what it did when I did that was it put the recognizer handler into the user interface, but it's not like an actual user interface component. It's just a handler that wasn't there by default. So now that it's there, we're going to connect the gesture recognizer into the actions. So control drag the chat gesture recognizer down here, and it'll add a function. We're going to select action, name it select image from photo library, and the type should be UI tap gesture recognizer. And connect. And that'll give us, this function will be called, this function here, method, will be called when we click on the image. Okay, now, the very last thing we'll do is we're going to put an image picker in to respond to user taps. So let's go back to the standard editor. And in the project Navigator, select viewcontroller.swift, and we're going to add two new protocols. The picker controller and the navigation controller delegates. And to implement the select image from photo library action method, in viewcontroller.swift, we're going to find the select image photo library action method we just added, and it's empty. And we're going to, in the method declaration between the curly braces, add this code, add all this code. I'm just going to kind of skip over this, and then this is how it should look in the end. So it does a few things. We're going to hide the keyboard. We're going to let the user pick from media from the photo library, and only allow photos to be picked, not taken. We could, so if we wanted to, we could make this allow it to use the camera as well. We're going to make sure the view controller is notified when the user picks an image, and we're going to present the view controller. Okay, to give users the ability to select a picture, we need to implement two delegate methods defined in UI image picker controller delegate. The first of these is image picker controller did cancel, so that's if they canceled. Oh, sorry, I forgot to add the mark right above the actions.
Is that marked just because we're using this GUI builder tool, or is it
All it is it creates a section in the code that there is. Yeah, there's somewhere in the IDE. I can't remember where. There. So you see properties. See all my marks here. You got properties. You got UI text field delegate here. You got.
Don't you jump to the code?
Yeah. So if I want to go here, it'll put the cursor there.
In addition to mark, you can also do to do, and you can do fixes.
Yeah.
And that lets you categorize things you need to do and things you come up with.
Okay. So now that we've got that mark, sorry I didn't properly explain that earlier. We're gonna put two methods. Image pick controller did cancel. And I'm really jumping over a lot because I need to get done at 7:45 Mary. Oh no, oh no.
7:45.
Yep. Last method in. And checkpoint run the app. You should be able to click the image view and pull up an image picker at this point. So all that code, and this is what we got. So now if we click on the image, it picks up an image picker, which allows you to select a photo from one of your albums. You're going to go to the camera roll. This is the default.
It will also ask you to allow the first time.
And I've already done that, so yeah. So I've already put the pictures on here. So I'm going to put, these are the pictures that are included with the project that you download. And that's it. Because we're getting on, I guess I'm going to go ahead and dismiss. I encourage you, if this, I mean, I know this code lab isn't really interesting, but if the prospect of developing for iOS does have your interest, then do this entire tutorial yourself, and you'll basically have the beginner skills you need to start writing native iOS apps. Given the rewards that you could get from being an iOS developer, it's probably worth it, especially if you're not already doing it.